Here are some things that are true that are just not news. The creative industries are in flux. Schedules are getting shorter. Budgets are tighter than ever. And new technologies present both danger and opportunity. I could have said any of those phrases at any time since the late 90s, and they would likely be true. So actually, is it business as usual for the creative industries? Just a few weeks ago, though, Technicolor filed for bankruptcy. The legendary company behind the three-strip Technicolor process, whose highly saturated colors were synonymous with the golden age of cinema in movies like Wizard of Oz and Gigi. But Technicolor is also the parent company to post-production titans like The Mill and MPC. These are giants that we thought would stand forever. So what now? In this episode, I sit down with Lee Pavey, founder of the Electric Theater Collective, one of the most creatively admired post houses in the world. He's now the vice president of the Hogan, a full-service creative music supervision house. When I first met Lee, he was a post-producer at The Mill, the Oscar-winning post house that with the collapse of Technicolor sadly is no more. He goes into the amazing role it and its people have had in the DNA of the advertising and creative industries. And what about that place attracted the best talent, and what about it made that talent better? We get into the collapse of Technicolor, the razor-thin economics of running a post facility, and the cultural lifeblood that makes these places special, and what it takes to build something that survives and inspires others. But what really struck me, and always strikes me about Lee, is his passion for people. He's not just talking about machines and margins. He's talking about craft, about culture, about why this work matters to the people doing it. And yeah, we talk about AI, not in the abstract, but in the real-world way it's affecting the next generation of talent and threatening their path to entry and development in the industry. So if you're someone in the creative industries who's nervous about the future, this episode will give you clarity and encouragement. It's an honest look at what it takes to adapt without letting go of what made us fall in love with this work and the legacy industries in the first place. Let's get into it. Well, listen, I'm psyched to talk to you. A, just to catch up and to see your smiling face, and B, because I'm thrilled that you were willing to do the podcast, and C, because, you know, obviously there's so much going on in the world of post-production now, and you're a modern day legend of it, whether you would accept that or not, you are. And so I'm really keen to talk to you about it. Just to give a kind of brief summary of your career, you were a producer at The Mill. You and I had a kind of similar trajectory. We kind of came up very much at the same time. You were a junior when I was an assistant, and then we both kind of graduated up. And then when I got the opportunity to open up the UK office of Biscuit in London, you were opening up Electric Theater Collective around the same time. And Electric Theater Collective, I think there was a quote in Televisual that said, "Not since dinosaurs have walked the earth has a post-production house unseated MPC or The Mill for the top spot." And arguably for, you know, all the time that you founded it and ran it, it was one of the most creative post-production houses in the world. So I'd like to kind of start there. I mean, looking back on your career, what do you think about it?
I think it's like, you know, people always say it's like the story of your life, like this decision, a bit like the sliding doors moment, like if you didn't do this wouldn't have happened. This didn't. You know, like I started my career, I was an aspiring animator and I was working at Marks and Spencer's while at college. And I was sketching in my notebook one day on my lunch break, and a woman there said, "Oh, what are you doing? Let me see your drawings." And she said, "Oh, my son does something like that. You should go and meet my son." And her name was Sally Knight. His name was Gary Knight. He's one of, at the time, he was cutting for Chris Cunningham, probably one of the most like influential filmmakers ever.
I mean, ever, still, yeah.
You know, his work, he's just an absolute auteur. Like, and she said, "You should meet my son." And she has two sons. One was working in film and one was an editor. So I went to meet the guy who did film first, and I was 17-year-old kid, you know, was born in 1978, so was brought up on Star Wars, and I truly believe in fate. And I'd go for this job interview, and I was like, "So what are you working on?" And they were like, "We're working on Star Wars Phantom Menace." And I was like, I need to work here. And I really thought like the stars have aligned. This is meant to have happened. I'm meant to have been in that place to do this, and I didn't get the job.
Bummer.
I did. That was like I said, it worked out quite well because her other son worked at an edit company, which was Inside Glassworks, who at the time were, in my opinion, like the most creative visual effects company. I turned up in a suit which people don't do in a job interview in the tech, in tech or creative. But I
Yeah.
did
I
that.
turned up to my first interview at Wieden Kennedy in a suit as well. And it was not the thing to do.
One tells you, and you sort of walking around like, oh, I feel really awkward because I'm the only person
Yeah.
in the suit. But, it's part of being young, and they saw past it and they saw the person. And I started off as a runner, didn't know what I was doing, and then progressed. And, along that way, I met interesting people, and I really love people. I just love, if it was a choice of going to the zoo or just going to sit in a park and watch people, I'd watch people. I'm a lot more interested. So I just wanted to meet everyone, and I just couldn't believe that this was a job. Number one, that this creative job existed, and two, that I was doing it and I'd been given this opportunity. No one in my family did it. It was totally alien. None of my friends did it, and I just wasn't going to let it slip. So everywhere I went, I was like, "What do you do? What do you do?" Must have been so annoyed. What do you do? How do you do this? And just lived the industry. I just wanted to be in it every single day. I would get up at 7, and I would come home late into the evening. And just loved it, and loved all the people, and met more and more people. Glassworks, I wanted to move on. But then I met someone in the street who said, "Oh, my friend's starting a new visual effects company." And I just thought the opportunity to go in somewhere and see a startup, I wanted to be part of it. Joined them, and then started doing...
Because it seems so unattainable, doesn't it? When you come in at that high level of something big, there's such a disconnect between where you're at and how you could possibly ever begin, because it's so mature. It sort of defies belief that it could have ever started as something small.
Exactly. And I think seeing that, it was a huge learning curve. They were independent. They were a breakaway from a big visual effects company. They had a client...
This was Golden Square, or who was this?
Post-production, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And they were a startup. So I joined and I helped set up the library system, and was just there on day one, and then moved into a junior producer role. There was no scheduling there. So just started picking up jobs, a few music videos, and a few years go by. And I was doing really interesting work. Again, I was working on funnily enough, a video with Chris Cunningham called Rubber Johnny. So I was producing...
God, amazing.
Yeah, incredible job. It was nuts.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And it didn't have a budget, so it was working around other projects. I was working with an incredible flame artist, Rachel Mills. So she was doing all the hard work. I was just producing it. But someone I used to work with at Golden Square had moved to the Mill, and he was like, "We got to hire Lee." And I didn't want to move, to be fair, at the beginning. And then at Golden Square, I was judging the British Arrows, and we watched the work, and the Mill's work came on, and I was like, "I've got to go." And then I went to the Mill. Remember day one, so I'm just going to keep rattling on. Day one going in.
No, please.
I'm realizing I didn't know what I thought I knew. This was
Operating at a different level.
For analogy, this is going from the first division to Premier League. These are Champions League quality, visual effects. These are the best in the world. And I just thought, I can't cut this. I thought I'll be here 3 months. It just won't happen. And then as I was spending more time there and getting more projects and working on more stuff, again, I just felt like I stepped up. The Mill was going through a transitional time, a time before where as a producer, you never had to do any new business or any sales or, Golden Square, it was win work. That was our thing. We had to win work. We had to be more creative and come up with ideas.
Yeah, it's all hands on deck. Yeah.
Yeah. And I go to the Mill and I'm like, okay, so how do scripts come in? Someone phones up and they talk to the receptionist, and then they get the script and they just email production and who can pick this up? And I was like, that really happens. This is nuts. And scripts are just coming in, constantly coming in. I sort of started doing more and more jobs, building my reputation at the Mill. And I was just going to say earlier, the transition was happening where they were having to work harder. MPC were just winning a load of incredible work, working with Dougal Wilson, making award-winning ads. So it was a little bit of a battle between MPC and Framestore. And at that time, we just became a bit more sales-focused because we had to be.
Yeah.
That timing of it becoming more salesy, and me, the person I am, and the way that I had an outlook on visual effects and what we should be doing. And I worked with I'm not the production team. I think back at those people and I look around, can still picture looking around the room, and it's again, they were the best of the best. Those people now run, or, are pretty much every visual effects company. maybe a 4 in 1 or 2. And everyone in that room has gone on to do really, really fantastic things, you know, either at Electric or Absolute or, you know, wherever, Black Kite, Number 8, wherever they are. You know, these are the people who are like running the industry. So I just, again, I hit the timing right and then was ready to move. I was getting offered a lot of jobs. So I'm just waffling. Sorry, you're going to, the history of Lee.
No, please. It's so great. I mean, it's and especially because I remember that as well. I mean, I remember meeting you through Fee, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
Fee Kilroy, who was so sweet to me and kind of really, she would give me sort of tours, which were really just ways to educate me about stuff I didn't know without lecturing me. She would come, let me show you this flame suite and explain to you how it works and give me that, you know, it was a remarkably, for a company that was moving that fast and doing that level of work, it was remarkably nurturing. You know, and you know, I always remember that the people there were fantastic.
Yeah, like, you know, and it had a really, really good training school. Like, I remember even when you went there for a job interview, I don't think anyone does this anymore. They would give you, as a producer, they would give you a board and say, bid this. You know, and the first, I remember like someone gave me a bit of a heads up, like, don't say, like, just say, I can't quote without an artist. And they were putting pressure on you to quote it. So you would keep battling back, like, no, I'm not going to quote it. And they did, they asked you, like, bid this job out, how would you do it? And, you know, like, that's why I think the producer was so good, because they could bid a job without an artist. They wouldn't, but they could. They had the skill set and the understanding of visual effects techniques. They weren't just like they weren't just taking data or information from flame artists or artists, 3D artists, and just typing it up for them. They knew how to like produce really, or how to solve
It
problems.
wasn't just glorified project management.
No. They knew how to like actually make the one. When I went to the Mill LA, I think there was maybe 15 people. Even though we had like the Mill name, it felt like a startup, which it kind of was. Going for a few years, but hadn't been successful. So then I was out there, and I was out there with Phil Crow, and most importantly, I was there with Giles Cheatham. So Giles was a flame up I'd worked with in London. We were good mates, and he went on to be my business partner at Electric. Yeah, so we were out there. I was ready to come home, but because of my path of like this like startup behemoth startup, like again, I'd sort of like learned what a startup was like. Not in the management team by any sort of sense, but had seen the way I built it, like a company started, worked at the behemoth, and just got to know everyone. So like I had loads of really loyal clients.
You know, London, where the entire ad industry is around Soho, or at least was back then. And, you know, I mean, at every pub, you're meeting up with people, and there's 10 different agencies and 4 different post houses represented. It was a real everybody muck in, and you know, and everybody was doing the same things and under the same pressures. And it was a wonderful place in your 20s to be learning that stuff.
Like I spent my childhood, like people say to me now, if I'm walking through something like, oh, how do you know I'm from like a market trader? It's like, I started when I'm 17 and I'm nearly 47. So like, this is 30 years of just like, I was here every day. So all the guys, like I was a runner picking up fruit and veg or like picking up fruit for the fruit bowls at work. Like you get to know that guy, you meet him every single day. Like you go to the same pub, you get to know the bar staff.
You know, you met Giles. Let's get into that kind of electric theater era, because it really did feel like you guys were doing something new. You guys tended to, a little bit maybe like your experience working on Rubber Johnny at Glassworks. You know, I remember you guys doing Super Atomic Turbo Ninja Rabbit with the line and kind of going, wait, these guys are investing in things that don't have a clear, you know, they're just cool. And it's attracting incredible talent. It's attracting a lot of people wanting to book you, because just walking in and waiting for your flame session, for example, you'd be like, there's a buzz going on here. Like, this is cool shit is happening. And you'd end up walking through the lobby and you'd be like, oh, cool. I'm going to see, you know, something we're doing over here, like Super Atomic Turbo Ninja Rabbit, or that great music video you did with the 2 guys in the 2 little animated guys in the RC car. And, you just grab me by the hand and be like, come look at this cool thing. And there was this sense of like excited people mucking in to, do everything professionally and do it at a high level for Nike and for Ogilvy and Wyden and whoever else. but you guys were bothering to invest your time, attention, and resources into these cool things. And it just made you want to be there. I can't explain it any other way.
Yeah, I think like the line are really special. I can't even put into words how fantastic they are, how talented they are. And seeing their success, you know, those guys have got an Oscar written all over them. If they don't, you know, they're making a film at the moment, like it will look like nothing else people have seen. Yeah, they believe in like, that was what I just loved about them. They're like true craftspeople. Like they could live in any era. They could live 2,000 years, or they could have lived 100 years ago, and they would be still making this incredible work. And it would be like you've seen, like Working Men was a joy. Do you know when you come into work and you think, I can't wait to go in, because they were doing like mega cool stuff. And we were like, you know, I'm not saying that making ads isn't cool, but we were doing what we knew. But then you're right, like in the background, they would just be like, we're going to make this game for Leonardo DiCaprio. And I'm like, and then I'd go downstairs and they'd be working on it upstairs off their own money, off their own back. Like, and then I'd go up and they'd be like, oh, we've launched it. And look at this. And then, like, YouTube is blowing up, and like the BBC are on the phone trying to like talk to them. And I'm like, they just did that. And that's priceless. You know, they're just, like you said, like there was always something cool going on at Electric. Like, you know, like they made stuff in VR. When they were there, they were just mega cool. Like they still are. You know, we piggybacked on top of that cool factor because they came in to do a job for Talk. It was a bit like, you know, like, I don't know, like Andy Warhol's factory, like, do you want to just come and like take a room, and do you want to use this? And we'll try to get you some work.
But I think that was actually quite rare. I think that, you know, it happens in that time when a founder like you is at that early stage, but London space in Soho or NoHo is at a premium. You know, seeing the value in going, no, that's going to be for them now, and making sure that you have that creative melting pot kind of happening. It's what made people want to come in for sessions with you guys. It's what made people like me want to bid you guys in on things, because you just felt like you were also going to get to see some cool new thing that somebody was working on, and they'd be happy to show you over their shoulder. And that just, made you feel more part of the creative process.
Sometimes it's nice to do something for you. And it felt like that was almost like for us, like we owned the company. We could kind of do whatever we wanted to do, but having them in the building, like it made us excited to be there. And it was like, we are making work for other people, but also this is kind of like for us. Even though we weren't doing it, the line were doing it, we were still part of it. You know, we were sharing space and sharing ideas and certain things. And just like, I would be excited to come to work. So the value of that is amazing. You know, like having, like, I can't wait to see what they'll do today, what Tim's going to come up with. You know, we'd on something and they would just come up with the most creative ideas.
It's funny because I feel like when hard times come, you know, and we'll get onto those with Technicolor and things like that in a sec, but when hard times come, or when something gets too big, or when the founders step away, suddenly a lot of time it becomes about profit and process. And what people forget is it's the culture that brought everybody in. It's the culture that attracted people here, both amazing talent and clients. And it's sort of then the first thing that gets chucked out when you get a little bit too big.
Yeah, I think like, you know, that's always the thing, is like, it's a creative business, and that balance between those two words, they have to work in harmony. Because you can be the most creative company and not make any money, and then you'll be closed in 6 months. Or you have to be like, or you become too much of a business, and like, what's going to be on your show reel? Like, and you're going to just, no one wants to be there. Like, if you're just doing one, like for every day you did an advert for, I'm trying to think of a brand that doesn't exist so I don't upset anyone, whatever, brand X, and you just work on that all the time and they just make nuts and bolts. So you'll be like, how many ads can we do for this? Like, you need to be excited, because then you'll start looking for other opportunities, or your staff will. But if they come in and they're like, this place is like creative, hot shot, everywhere I go I'm like inspired, people want to be part of that. And like I say, so we always try to do that. And to be fair, they still do it over at Electric. Like, it's baked into the culture, like that's what you're going to be like. And we did things for ourselves. We didn't care. Like, we didn't care, okay, if it costs money, but is it good? And do we feel proud of it? Like, and we're still talking about that. Like, so I think, you need to keep that balance. The problem is when you run out of money and money gets tight, like you were saying, that stuff does get like, are we going to spend £30,000 on this because we like, and you just can't. It's just life, isn't it? So having money definitely allows you to be more creative. That's not a new thought, is it? Having money to be creative. Oh, yeah. That's it. Yeah, that's what it does, isn't
Yeah,
it?
but I do think that, when you're in a startup mentality, a lot of the time it becomes all about, saving every single penny. And when you're letting precious resource that you have out the door on something that doesn't have a tangible financial benefit, that can feel very scary. But you're right, that is the lifeblood of the creative industries. And so part of it is about figuring out what that barometer is internally as a company manager to figure out how to, let that grow, that culture.
Yeah, I think it's just like, you need to love it. You invest in things. It's like anything, like, maybe some people don't, but anything I do, like a friend of mine, Simon, he was like, oh, you should look at the world like through three lenses. Like, does it do good in the world? Does it make you excited? And is it a time drain? And like, if you can answer those questions, like, I don't want to, personally, if I was offered the opportunity to invest in a company which pollutes the world, I don't want to do that. Some people are happy to do that. Some people are. Personally, me, I'm not happy to do that. That's not where I sit in the world. So I think like those sort of tools, they were ingrained in all three of us as partners. Like, well, let's do this. James would come to me all the time, like, think this is cool. Think this is cool. We should do this. We should do that. I'm like, yeah, I think we should. Or Giles would be like, yeah, I love this. Let's do it. Or Giles would be like, no. Why are we going to spend 10 grand on this? Like, no, let's not do it. So together quite well as a team, like, we should back this. We shouldn't, having three of us meant like we didn't make any stupid decisions. If two of us believed in it, we signed it off and did it.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask is obviously, one of the things that we're doing at KoobrikLabs is building technologies and using a lot of, AI and a lot of, just Python libraries and things like that as well. Obviously, a kind of monumental shift is occurring, especially in post-production from, the pressures that companies are under of shrinking schedules, and that's not new. But, now you've got things like Midjourney creating incredibly lush looking visuals very quickly, but without a lot of control. How is that impacting post-production, at large?
We did a job for Coca-Cola, and really, like, if you'd had the time, people would have done it, but we didn't have the time to do this. So we used we used AI to create a look, and we did it in a...
Was this the one in the art gallery?
Yeah, in the art gallery, which
Right.
it replicated like artist paintings, and it put that look on some images. So that is an example of it doing good, of it really working. But it really is just a tool. People start in the industry. They start in compositor, for example. When I grew up, your entry level position was maybe you started as a runner, you worked up to the machine room, and then you started like cutting mats, like cutting things out, roto stuff. And that was part of your journey to like, okay, and then you learn a few more techniques, you're on the box, you're learning stuff. Like AI it will replace like roto, it will do that. So it does worry me, like, okay, how do people start? And maybe, people who have been to university and to art school, and they're using this kit at home, but for people who maybe aren't from that background, who haven't been to school, like, I didn't go to university. A lot of people at the mill didn't go to university. They learned on the job. They started as runners. They were exposed to the expensive kit, and then they could learn it on the job. And that's my slight worry, is that work won't be there to enable us to hire a lot of young people, bring young people through. So that's a bit of a worry. Also, a lot of companies outsource this kind of work to other markets, places like India, where you could get a lot of people at a lower cost who are highly skilled. They are incredible out there, like in India. They're unbelievably talented. So if this AI shift happens, like, I hope there's a room for these artists, because again, like, we are trying to get as many people into visual effects, not lose people. And personally, I heard this the other day, like, I was listening to something about the Brits, and they were like, okay, this Beatles song was AI helped create this new Beatles song. And then someone else was like, oh, this artist, they was talking about art being created by AI. And I was like, this doesn't sound like what I want AI to do. Like, I don't really want AI to do music and art, and then I'm like filling the dishwasher or like cleaning pots or something. I'm like, I think this is the wrong way around. Like, it should be the tool to make us be able to do more and enjoy, create more music, so the machine understands more, because it's only learning what we've taught it. And music and art and creativity is about learning about the past, but also coming up with something new. So that bit keeps me like, okay, people will still be there. People aren't going to disappear. But I suppose it's just how much we get caught up in the hype of AI and what it's doing. Like, I think seeing what it's doing, you know, in like your business and in other businesses, like, we couldn't have this, you know, these businesses wouldn't exist without AI supporting it. And that's when AI is brilliant. That's when it's fantastic. You know, it's like inventing a bicycle for the first time, you know, like humans weren't the fastest thing on the planet. And then we invite in the bicycle, and now we are. Like, that's kind of where I would like AI to go. Like, I'm not saying it's going to solve all world problems, but like, you know, find cures to diseases. Is going to, like, you know, it's going to enable people a better quality of life and a longer life and a healthier life. And that's exciting. That bit gets me excited. But what I don't want to do is, like I say, be doing the really like manual labor job while AI is creating all the music I listen to and all the paintings I buy.
I mean, I sort of feel like it must feel now the way it felt when, you know, when the physical editing of film, you know, when they were gluing it together and then suddenly it moves to video. I think there is some real beauty in the craft of those things. And I think that it's sad to watch them go away. And I think that everybody's hope, I think, is that it won't. I think the fear, though, is that, you know, the film industry is going through it right now. People aren't being fired because of AI. People are being fired because the business model is broken and they're having to let people go, but they still need to churn out the same amount of work. So they're having to use AI to fill the gaps that once was filled by people. And so everybody's like, oh, people are going to be gotten rid of. But actually, it's sort of the other way around, as we're noticing these big economic cracks in the business models.
Yeah, people now as well.
And that's driving us into the arms of AI.
Yeah, and also like machines are becoming cheaper. You know, like the kit that you know, if you wanted a grading system, you know, like a Telecine before, you would pay over £1 million. Like, not too many. Like, you know, that was a big change for us. Like, when I remember when we started, we had a machine room, which even now sounds like archaic. Like, we had this machine, and a digibeta machine cost 200. I think it was like 200 grand. Like, it was ridiculous. We didn't have that money, and we came like electric was sort of funny, just on the cusp of this revolution. We had a machine room, and we had a gap for the digibeta machine, and people would ask us like, "Oh, can we put this on digi?" I'm like, "Why would you want that?" Like, no, you don't need it. We can just give you a digital. And I was trying to save the company from just like spending 200 grand, and we never got that machine in once. Like, if we'd opened a year earlier, we would have had to have that machine.
I had a similar thing where when I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to set up the UK office of Biscuit, and I sent out DVDs to all the production departments, and everybody was like, "We don't have a DVD wall anymore, dude." Like, this is
But you know
no
what?
way.
It's
So,
great.
yeah.
It's a great sales tool, because they phoned you up and you had a conversation with someone. It was worth it.
Yeah.
And then it was better than having a reel.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, you can be like, you know, there's those great stories, aren't there, about like Kodak, where you can just bury your head in the sand and say, this isn't going to happen. No, film is never going to go anywhere. And then someone makes a digital camera and you're like, really? Like, Kodak made a digital camera. And film is still needed, but not at the, you know, it's come back into fashion to shoot on film. It definitely, like, you could have had both. You could have still owned the film, and you could have developed a digital camera. And I feel like that's could be what happens with AI as well, is like, you have to embrace it and use it, but you use it for what it's there for. You know, it's that fine balance, and everyone's feeling it out. Like, oh, is this going to be the next thing? Because we've been through this in the past where like something was going to happen. It was going to change the, like 3D TVs. How many people have got a pair of 3D glasses in their drawer never ever put on?
Yeah.
Someone watched Avatar once and that was it. Like, you know, it changed everything. Like, I don't even think that
Yeah, I haven't seen a Segway in a long time as well. That was supposed to change the world at one point.
Mate, I'd love to have a go on one, but I think I'm just too old. I'd fall off. There's nothing more embarrassing than an old man falling off a Segway. But there's things, I'm sure there's technology like that's from
That might be the most embarrassing thing that can happen to a man is falling off a Segway.
Falling off a Segway.
Or it's up there at least.
It's definitely got to be there because it would hurt. You'd be wearing that little helmet. You'd be like, everyone would be looking. And then you'd probably have to pay a fine for damaging the Segway. But like there's some tech in there that's probably used in like military grade,
yeah, I'm sure.
Some drone somewhere that's like using that's using Segway technology.
Yeah, the magic of sort of unintended consequences.
Yeah, I feel so there's, and then there was VR. Everyone was talking about VR. Meta will put a lot of money into
an augmented reality. You're right. There have been a lot of kind of over promises and misfires.
Yeah, and that's when I don't think AI is that. I think AI probably is the real 100%.
Yeah, I mean, so you touched very briefly in there on kind of the economics of post production. A digibeta machine just even costing $200,000, and the shifts kind of reducing some of the costs for you setting up electric. Okay, so to get into this, Technicolor obviously just closed. The Mill, where you worked for a long time, is now kind of no more. MPC, no more. I mean, this, to us growing up in the industry we grew up in, is mind-blowing. It just feels like there's an empty hole where once a giant stood. Can you shed any light on, and I'm not asking you to reveal anything sensitive, but can you shed some light on the economics of a post-production house and what sort of challenges they're under? Yeah, and how they manage those.
Yeah, it's the thing about VFX is that normally you need quite a lot of people, to deliver a job. There are ones which are smaller, but the difficulties are that you need a lot of people and very, very talented people from a very small talent pool. So you have, every company wants all the best people. Goes back to my football analogy. You want to get this player, get this player, get this person, get this person. And you want to try to build your fantasy visual effects company. You want to have this amazing person, this amazing data guy. You want to have all these bits that kind of work together. And the margins in VFX are really tight. A lot of the time, the most but the most creative work normally needs loads of people. So I'm going to ramble for a little bit, but needs loads of people. Normally the budget isn't always the best for those bigger projects. And you know this as well. They're the ones you kind of invest in because they're the pieces that get you show up what you can do and they get you other work. So you're playing this game all the time, which is you're analyzing hugely and also putting your trust and your experience and your feeling behind the project. I think we would choose really wisely the music videos we invested in because invariably they would cost money. So you've got to put your you got to put your trust that this is going to do it, and everyone in that process is going to do their job to the best of their ability to make this piece of work incredible. So when we worked on music videos, and it was is this going to be the one? Or a big commercial, you'd be like, okay, is this going to be the one? And like I say, that's what, as the people who were running the business, we would look at scripts and be like, this is the one. You can tell this director, this script, this is the one. But sometimes, and this is where I think certain companies, the people who run those companies are they know what they're doing, but the problem you have, so I'm trying to phrase this in the right way, is there are people above them in a country somewhere else who aren't on the ground and they're not living the industry.
Yeah. So are you speaking specifically about let's a company less like Electric and more like
owned by
the Technicolor thing where you've got a kind of a holding company that owns lots of different companies, and then you've got an on the ground company like The Mill that's just trying to do good work and stay relevant in its local market, and it can't really respond in the same way because it's
and
sorry to paraphrase, but is that what you mean?
Right. I was trying to find the right words because, like I say, everyone there is incredible. if I knew I was up against the Mill, I would feel dread. I'd be like, oh, they're on it, because you knew they had like amazing people, an amazing show reel. They had all the bits behind them. So, it's like anything. If you're, I don't know, David versus Goliath, like, if that kind of battle, we knew we were more nimble. That was the one thing we had. They had money and power and history and all these incredible people. They had like 4,000 people, and like, oh my God, there's 12 of us. Like, how are we going to take on this big guy? But we knew we were like nimble, quick. We were on every single project that the owners were on, had their eyes on everything. So when something came in, we're like, this is the one, we believe in it. Let's make a decision quickly. We're doing this. Whereas a bigger company, I'm not talking about the Mill, but just any company where you have like a chain of command, lots of people, if it was going to cost us 20 grand, we were like, okay, it's going to cost us 20 grand. Let's just do it. Or we're not going to make anything on this one, but we know.
And you're saying it's a decision-making group of three.
And we're like, let's do it. And we could do that. And then they would take other companies. This isn't aimed at the Mill, but any company who's big would be like, it would take 2-3 days to get an answer back. And by then they're like, well, Electric want it, so we're going to give it to Electric. And that was like,
by the time you've got the post bid in, and between the post bid coming in, finalizing your bid and sending it off to the client for approval, that's 48 hours top.
The client is putting pressure then on the big company with this like chain of command to say, give us an answer. And they couldn't do that. Anyone big we went up against, that was our outlook. Like, go quick, make decisions, stand by it, put good people on it. I think sometimes we took projects on when we just wanted to do it. We didn't have the right people. And that was always a mistake. Like, learning to say no is, if we don't work with this director, they'll go and work somewhere else. We'll never see him again. So we were like living in, so there's lots going on in that post-production world, but you're competing for people. Going back to your original point, is like competing for people. And the way you compete is looking after them better, giving them a culture which, and business around them, which they're excited to be part of, and money, and you're buying a lot of really expensive kit. There's a whole load of people behind the scenes at visual effects companies, not just the artists, the CG artists and the compositors. You have people running the machine room, making copies. You have a receptionist, you have a team of runners, you have producers across the board. You have a lot of people to make that business work, and it needs a lot of infrastructure. You're investing in like data, like cables in and out of the building. You're investing in pipelines to make the CG and the 2D teams like connect. You're investing in everything from like bananas in the fruit bowl. You're constantly like spending money, and that's why it's a really tough industry, because like I say, somewhere new opens. I'm sure we did it. Like, you want to get the best people, so you have to pay them. And all of a sudden, everyone's money starts going up. You're working on razor thin margins a lot of the time, especially the most creative work. So it is really, really tough. And you can get into a thing where clients don't pay for 90 days. So you're bankrolling jobs, that's when it becomes like the pressure's on. Someone doesn't pay you, someone say it, like, you've got to pay your staff. You don't pay them late, you pay them on time. And so there's a huge risk in having in visual effects companies. And once you start getting into debt, and I don't think this is limited to visual effects companies, I think this is anyone, like a person, it's really, really hard to get out of it. It's hard to yourself out, if you're earning a certain amount of money, and you're, I don't know, if you're $5,000 overdraw, and you get paid $5,000 a month, like, it's hard to pay your bills and to pay off a debt, and you end up slipping into that. And it's the same with businesses, like, we'll get this money later, and then your decisions then become about money, not about having that creative freedom. So it is mega tight. I think like there were outside problems with Technicolor from what I can hear. I don't know the truth, but I would believe that the Mill and the MPC were profitable. I don't think they weren't. I think they were profitable. Other parts of their business, from what I know, like, they were making DVDs not long ago. They were making and that was a huge part of their business. And when that disappears, you need to like fill that gap. What you can't do is take a hit on revenue, because you have shareholders who say, well, I'm just picking numbers out the air, we make 200 million a year. And you go, okay, we've lost this part of our business. It's 10 million. You have to be like, okay, how are we going to fill that 10 million gap? Take a hit and we just pile it on the other businesses because the businesses are doing the best they can. And, you know, like I saw some of the Super Bowl work the Mill put out and the MPC put out. It's incredible. You know, those people still did that. You know, they all did it. And, you know, I think were problems higher up reading every article that's come out and all the other stuff. You know, there was a lot of restructuring, renaming to get, you know, separations of businesses. I think there was a thing with like encoding, like they owned an IP for a certain encoding system that disappeared. Like, you know, I don't know for ins and outs, but if you have a contract with someone for 100 million quid and they go, well, we've got our own encoding system now, you're like, okay. And you got to play. And the problem is then you put more pressure on the Mill, more pressure on MPC to keep making more money. And eventually people break and the wheels fall off. Or people want to go do it themselves like we did. You know, I love the Mill. It breaks my heart what's happened because I still work there. Loads and loads of people I really genuinely care about who, like, you know, I still see them. You know, I still in touch with them even now. Like, and I've been gone for 14 years. I still talk to those people. So it makes me very sad that they're not around. But yeah, like I say, I just think there's other things that have gone on. I don't think the blame solely lies with MPC. And you also
No, and I think that felt very clear even from the outside. I think that, you know, it felt like, yes, a shift has happened that post-production houses are under threat, but it didn't seem like the Mill or MPC would be the weak links in the Technicolor chain.
No, I don't think. But like I say, if the group is £1 billion in debt, they can't survive. Like, you know, and I'm guessing that they were probably looking for a buyer right up to the end to try to save it and try to get those people okay. But it's a lot.
I'm surprised they couldn't sell the pieces off. I'm surprised they couldn't just sell the Mill off for, you know, a portion. I guess maybe it's just a drop in the bucket and, you know, and it doesn't move the needle, but.
And if you sell it, like, it doesn't clear your £1 billion debt and you still go into, you still become bankrupt. And then
receivership,
that money just goes into administration. So it just gets shared among debtors anyway. So it's loads of work to sell it. And it's probably not, you know, time ran out. Like I said, I think it seems like in America, there's a company called ARC that's starting with a lot of really talented Mill people who I work with in LA. Then also you look at the other companies that, you know, we were a breakaway from the Mill, you know, Selected Works, breakaway from the Mill, you know, Blacklight, breakaway from MPC. I'm trying to think of all these new companies. Like, there's so many. Like, in America, you have Blacksmith in New York, you have Parliament in LA and New York, so many. And I think that really, like, is the history of the Mill. That's the way it will be remembered. Like, all these companies were formed because out of this one thing. You know, and it goes back to the point as well, like, those huge behemoth companies, it's like turning around an oil tanker. It takes a long, long time. But if you've got 12 people, you know, I know when we lived through COVID, you know, we made decisions really quickly. Some were really tough. You know, they still hurt. There's one decision in particular. It's kind of a bit like, do you know what? I wish we hadn't done. But we were living through a time where we had to make decisions, and there's some were really, really horrible decisions you had to make, but we had to save the company. And that was difficult enough. And we had maybe 60 people at that point, maybe a few more. But like, imagine having 4,000 people. Like, how do you solve this problem? You know, and going back, the industry changed. You know, like, Electric were very lucky that our rent was up at the building we were in. So we moved into a cheaper premises. So we could keep you know, we could keep everyone, as many people as we could on. We could keep our fixed costs down and deliver for our clients. You know, by keeping our fixed costs down, it didn't mean we just made loads more money. It meant we could go back to making the right creative decisions. You know, we used that money. Well, let's invest in these jobs. Let's invest in this, because we didn't have to make as much. But for some companies, you know, maybe the Mill for them, you know, they had 2 huge offices in central London, and overnight the industry changed. People were working from them. So you've got these 2 huge buildings. It's like, again, it's a fixed cost. Before you've turned the lights on, you're having to pay for it, and you've got a contract. You can't leave that. So, you know, it was really tough for them. I'm sure it was real. I really felt for those guys, and I still do. Like, and when I said the guy, I don't know the people who run Technicolor, but I know the people who ran the Mill and MPC, and I feel for them. They're the good guys. You know, they're really good people. And also, like, you talk about margins and the way visual effects companies run. Like, we haven't even really spoke about film. You know, like, you might have 600 people working on a film. You know, the writers strike, or there's a change, or someone doesn't like the character that's in it. You know, if I've got 4 people on a job and it overruns by a week, I'm like, if you've got 400 people and it overruns by a week, that's a huge amount of money. And it's, you know, and the margins in long form seem to be even smaller, you know, but it's rewarding when you get it. You know, if you bring something under, or you deliver it to that number, it's incredible. You can make money, and it can be profitable and successful. But when it starts overrunning, it becomes tough, you know, really, really tough.
Well, also because doing it all just to break even is really hard, because it means, you're doing it for the opportunity of the work, and you're doing it to get the people around. But then you need to have some breathing space, or you're right, you immediately go into this place of fear and making decisions based on money, which is just not going to lead to the best creative work.
Yeah, this isn't, even though it's shocking, because obviously we know the people, you know the Mill. It's like, there's been signs that this is going to happen. Like, Rhythm and Hughes won an Oscar for Life of Pi, and they went to administration 2 weeks before they won an Oscar. Like, an incredible studio. We've seen with, like, Digital Domain, and like other people, have gone through these challenges in well, they've gone through that. So it's not really surprising. It's just, I think it's just when something big in your life changes like that, that's always been there, it's kind of a bit, and especially something you've been part of, it's like, oh shit, that's not there anymore. Technicolor did Wizard of Oz. Like, Jesus, like, that's, like, who would have thought back then, after, that this company wouldn't be around anymore? It's quite, I don't really, like, I'm sure everyone there had a headache. I'm getting anxiety just thinking about what the meeting towards the end. But, I just feel for the people. That's the most important thing. Those people are good. And the industry, there's a whole load of new talent out there now. Again, it's like supply and demand, isn't it? Like, now there's loads of people, and people are getting very paid. Like, does it mean that people will take lower for their rates? Will people start playing those games? That's a bit scary as well, because people have.
Well, we're hiring right now, and I'm scouring those lists for everybody in LA, and and because I just know that's incredible talent that's there that we would be so lucky to have. I mean, all you need to tell me is that you worked at the Mill for a while, and I know you are world class.
But that's what it meant. Like, I think that's why, even when we spoke earlier about my decision to go there, it was like, if I go there for 6 months, I've got the Mill on my CV. This is going to open every door. Like, people will just be like, this guy's good, because you don't get a job somewhere like that unless you're world class. But like I say, the margins are thin, and it's hard work in VFX. It is not easy. It used to be like, it is fun, and the people are amazing. You get to, like, hang out with your mates all the time, and the culture in businesses are good. But like I say, it's just becoming tougher and tougher. Things will become easier now. Maybe there's still the same amount of work. The other thing we've got as well is clients spending their money differently. We're seeing like
diversification across media platforms.
Exactly. And before, if you had 100 million budget to go and make TV ads through, that's where it would be spent. It was on TV ads, and that's where it went. And Nike would spend all their money. I'm sure now they've probably got more money. They've probably got 150 million. Like, they've probably got a lot more, but they're spending it on social and on other platforms. And they're still making TV, but just not as much. There used to be those stellar ads like every year. They're becoming fewer and fewer. Where you
one more, just staying in the post-production world, is there something you wish somebody like me, who has booked post-production so many times, I mean, both as an agency producer and then in a production company, what's the kind of, is there one thing that you wish producers knew about post-production when they kind of came to the table, either technically or just the margins, as you say? Is there anything particular?
You know what I would say? Like, the one thing you can't buy is time. There's nothing worse. Like, and I don't know. I don't always know the insides of an agency. Like, like, I haven't got the experience in agency world as you have. We would get given stuff, and it's like, okay, like, someone's watched The Matrix or like whatever new film was out that shows like they'd watch this and they go, okay, we want to recreate this effect. And you'd be like, okay, we've told the client it's going to cost 20 grand and we've got 2 weeks to do it. And then like VFX is like the bad guy for saying, you just can't do it. And they're like, well, you must be able to do it. Come on, you must be. And then you're trying to solve a problem. Like I would always say, like, get in touch early with a VFX house and just be like, how long do I need? And bake that into the time, because there's nothing worse. Once an agency said to the client, oh, we're going to do this in 2 weeks. Like, and then you phone and you're like, we can't do that. And that means, like, number one, you don't want to go back to your client and say, oh, we can't deliver this. So I think it's always just like engage early, like roughly how much you think this will cost and how much time do you need, like answering those questions and feeding that back to the client and like using that talent. Like you just wouldn't do that with any other part of your life. You were building a house and you didn't even talk to the builder and was like, oh mate, like you couldn't do me a 4-bedroom house, could you? Like, grand. And you can do it in 4 days. You can do that. It'd be like, what are you mad?
Yeah.
That's kind of what VFX gets asked to do. By asking that question and giving yourself the right amount of time, like money can always be negotiated or people might want to take a hit.
Yeah.
It's creative. The time you can never get back. My business partner, it's one of my favorite sayings. He was like, a baby takes 9 months to get pregnant. You can't just get 9 women pregnant and expect a baby in a month. Like, it just doesn't, it doesn't work. You need this to make things as they should be, then perfect. And I think that's a good start. That would be my one tip. And you know, it's a process as well. Like you want to all be in it together. That's my other thing. Like there's nothing worse than going into a room and thinking everyone here hates us. Like whatever job you are, like the agency producer is thinking everyone hates me. Everyone in the VFX room is thinking, well, the agency hate us, and everyone. If you're in it together and you've got this like community spirit, like we all want the same thing. We want this ad to be incredible. Most people are like, you're not going to get the best out of people if you're being shouted at every day. Like, so should I work for free for a couple of hours to be shouted at some more? Or, you get the best out of people, and people work so hard in every aspect of the industry. But from my experience, like there was times where I didn't have like a weekend off. I think it was like for like 4 months, didn't have a day off, like delivering an ad. And I wasn't doing that because like I was being pressured into doing it. Did it because I wanted the ad to be brilliant and I wanted it to be good, and it needed to be that those hours needed to be put in, and people were nice and friendly. And I went in and I was like, towards the end, I'm tired thinking, I must be able to do another job. There's got to be something else I can do. And then you meet it.
Yeah. The amount that, you just don't want to let anybody down. I always say that like you only have to remodel a kitchen to really appreciate how the advertising community is a self-regulating, incredibly hard-working industry of people who deliver on time, deliver on budget, and care deeply and work very hard. And it really gives you an appreciation the moment you try to do anything else in any other industry.
Well, that's the other thing about VFX as well. In the process, you've made a really good point actually, which is the deadline is here. Like this is the play out date. This never moves. But like, this is your timeline. The shoot, if it overruns and then the edit overruns and everything overruns, this deadline never changes. So like this was our VFX time. All of a sudden, everything is pushed into it. And we end up not, instead of having 2 weeks, we've got 4 days because someone didn't sign something off or a prop turned up late or whatever it is. Like, the edit taking longer. We all...
Yeah, you can't negotiate with a brick wall.
You cannot negotiate. It's coming towards you.
I have another one that I've been kind of asking everybody, but Dan Wyden had a quote. He said, "You're useless to me until you failed big at least twice." Can you think of, and would you be willing to share a time where you failed big or small and what you learned from it?
When we opened in LA, we opened in London. We were a bit under the radar. No one really took us seriously. And we were, as my business partner's dad said, we were farting silk. Everything was just fucking going good. Like everything we did, it was just great. Anything bad we did, it was just brilliant. And we'd come from LA and we knew people there, and we were slightly seduced. Like we were doing music videos for people in London.
And you would have that experience at the Mill.
I've been there. Like I knew people there. And Giles knew people there. And then I remember we were working with these really talented music video guys, and we were working on a job. It had like hardly any money. And And they were like, we've just put this Super Bowl job. It's like £500,000 for like VFX. We were like, we should be there. Why are we not there? So we opened, and we made two mistakes. We didn't follow the success pattern, what we did in London. We opened too big. And the second thing was, me and Giles knew people, we didn't go. And it impacted the business at that time because it was just knackering. We were working hard in London. It's my end of the day. I'm like knackered, and all those people are looking to you to be excited and to be like, let's go, let's do this. And we were, so it was becoming like tougher and tougher to keep that energy going for another 8 hours. And when times were tough over there, they had a massive impact. People in America and in the VFX industry get paid a lot more than the UK. So if you win, you win big. But when you foul, like, and we were fully independent. It was us. Like, we didn't have any money. There was no like secret millionaire in the background going, yeah, don't worry, you have some losses, we'll ride that out. It was on us. So when we had losses, they was tough. And I remember going into a room and seeing like the P&L and then walking out, and my mate was like, you're right, you look fucking like shocked. And I was like, we got to close it now. And that was really tough. But coming out.
And how long was that from starting to the realization, just this is not, we got to cut and run? How long was that?
We were open for about 2.5 years, maybe 3 years, I think. Right. We were open. And we had really like some of my favorite jobs came out of that office. They were really, really good jobs. And it just got tough. I think people took us very like, they weren't just like, oh, them idiots, they'll go away, which is what I think they thought in London. They were like, we've seen what they've done in London. We're not going to let them do that here. We're going to hang on to clients. We're going to fight, and we're going to underbid, and we're going to get them out of business as quickly as we could.
Oh, really? I see. So it was just a more mercenary environment here. And because you didn't kind of set up lean like you had in the UK, you were sort of more at risk of market forces. And
there was a point where like LA had half the amount of staff, but they cost more to run than London. And that was like, this is quite crazy. Like, you know, we should have just opened, started smaller, lower risk, less fixed costs. You know, you don't get a massive office, don't do all these things, like grow organically rather than trying to force this on people. And it was a mistake, but I think like learning that lesson, I'm glad we made it earlier in electrics history, because the success that came after that in London, you know, we knuckled down, we focused on the good thing we had. And we had Michael Bork, our chairman, and who'd been through stuff like this before, and Steph working in finance, and obviously the partners and all the staff. Everyone just like focused on, this is what we need to do today. This is what we need to like focus on, the good thing we've got. And that was like, all of a sudden it was like the rocket had been strapped to us, and the losses we incurred, we got to like wipe away pretty quickly. And it was just really successful. And towards the end, like my job changed. I like being part of the creative part of it. The worst part is I literally felt like sometimes I would, you know, the buck stops with you as a partner and as owner of the business. So like things that I had nothing to do with, you know, you're apologizing for. That's tough. Wheeled out like Hannibal Lecter into a room, like all these people are going to shout at you now and tell you, and can you make it all better? And then we'll, you know, get back on with the job. When you're trying to manage, it's a bit like being a politician.
Yeah. And then when you leave, we'll slag you off after you leave.
I'm like, just use me as the bad guy. Just kick me. Put me on the floor. Come and kick me for a little while. But you know what? Like, that's part of it as well. Like, just taking that. I remember being at the Mill and someone said, this job was going really badly. Can you come in and produce it? And I went into the room. The director hated everyone in the room. He said, I think, did he say to me he was going to, I went to say, he said to one of the producers who he was having a row with, if you don't stop, I'm going to kick you. And I was like, hang on, wait, we're not going to start kicking people. And he was only saying, he didn't mean he wasn't really going to kick someone. I went, oh, hang on a minute. And he was like, no, I'm going to kick you as well. I'm just come in the room. I'm just turned up. And then everyone laughed about it. But I was thinking for a second, yeah, okay, I'm going to get like, I've never been kicked before because of just trying to help. That's the story of VFX. When someone gives you a kick. I've never been kicked. I want to say that. Like, I've never been kicked in VFX, but
just nearly,
just threatened with a kick.
Yeah.
For something I didn't do. But that's fine. That's part of life. Shouting at me. I'm used to it. just go numb behind the eyes. Like I'm just okay, fine. Bring me in. I'm good in a crisis,
Yeah.
Orlando. I'm good in. That's what it is.
Yeah. Oh, always. I've seen you in quite a few.
It's self-inflicted, those ones. They're
Yeah. Well, it's that the producer's trick is you've got to be the one that stays calm. I've always felt like you're a lot better at it than I. I sort of go quiet. I sort of try to look calm. You very often will break the tension with a joke or be, you'll calm everybody else down. I kind of go calm and just leave the room quietly.
I learned a really good trick, which was I've got a dog. She's been, like I said earlier on the call, she's been snoring and making noise, and she just taps me and hits me all the time. But I read a study that when you stroke a dog, it calms you down. So I'd have a dog with me in the office like all the time. And if I knew it was getting a bit tense in somewhere, I'd just like creak the door open and just push the dog in. And the dog would just walk in. She loves people, so she'd go in. Everyone would stroke her. I could hear everyone go, "Oh, whose dog is this?" And being happy. And I'm like, "I'll go in the room now." And I'd go in, I'd be like, "Oh, is everyone okay?" They'd be like, "Yeah, it's great, it's great." And they'd just stroke the dog, hang out. And it was like a real calming influence in the office. So I'm learning all the skills to like.
That is the greatest hack I've ever heard in my life. I imagine edit houses around London, if anybody watches this, which of course they won't, but I imagine if they do, edit houses around London will be getting office dogs immediately.
I don't want to get too political, but when I saw the Zelensky Trump thing, I did think to myself, Zelensky should just bring a dog in. Just like let it into the room, and like JD Martin and Trump would get distracted by it. They'd start stroking, and then like the wall would be like, all the tension in the room would have just disappeared. When Border Collie had come in, everyone would have been like, okay, let's get back to being serious and just like, calm down a little bit.
That's the greatest producer's hack I've ever heard. I might actually add to these things, what's your personal hack for doing your job right and whatever else.
Get a dog.
Because that's phenomenal.
Yeah, get a dog, get distracted. It has to be a cute dog. The cuter it is, the more stress it can get rid of. Yeah, and then just also like the most important thing. I know we've talked about like the problems and stuff. It is the most fantastic. Like it's given me so much in my life. I'm so thankful for like the people I've met, the opportunities I've been given. The most amazing thing is no matter what you're into, right? If you're like a mathematical genius, or if you're like a guy who worked on a market stall selling flowers, there's a job for you in this industry and everywhere in between. Whatever if you're artistic, if you're into like writing, whatever you do, there's a room for you in advertising in some way. And I think that is pretty incredible. Yeah, you never get these people together in any other walk of life. You just hang out with them, and they're the people like they're the like friendships I treasure. Like when I was out in LA, like me and you, like hanging out at some bar somewhere, or like how did I get here with like all these amazing people? Like it's just wicked. Love it.
It's one thing I think film studios suffer from is they get so big that the departments are in different buildings on different floors and whatever else. And I do think that you're right. And that being so connected to everybody, an agency and a post house and a production company and everybody being so close, there are industries that kind of put everybody in a pot and just shake it up and then go, all right, how are you guys all going to cope with this together? And you're like, well, by finding common ground and by getting along with each other and by laughing our way through it and by working hard, because everybody's looking over everybody's shoulder and knows what everybody's doing. You can't hide in advertising. You'll get called out very fast.
I think that's what's really been like so heartening in this horrible time, like what's going on at Technicolor and people like losing their work, like is that I've seen people like, in London, you know what it's like there's a Soho, studios aren't invariably in Soho, but it is like the place we still gravitate to. And that's where like friendships and communities, it's like living in a commune. When you go to like Glastonbury or a music festival, everyone's into like a band, or you go and see someone, everyone there has got this shared experience. Soho is a bit like that, I think, where it's like a community of people, everyone can go there. Even though you're competing against people, they're still your friend and you want to see them succeed. And I think that's what makes and seeing the way that the communities come together through this Technicolor closure in London, from the things that the APA were doing to support people out of work, that is the best of us. Like that kind of sticking together, let's do this. Because people could have just been like, well, I don't like the mill. I'm glad they're closed. More work for everyone. But people didn't say that. They're like, I want to help. And that is really, really amazing. And I think it's the perfect storm of, like you said, the industry and the way that where advertising was in London, in Soho, or in East London, that slightly shifted. But, you know, there's communities. You see people on the street who work in your industry and like stop and go for a drink and chat. And yeah, pub community is a big thing as well, isn't it? And restaurant hanging out. So yeah, even though it's a dark time, I think it's pretty amazing seeing all these people band together for a good cause.
For sure. Well, dude, on that note, I mean, that's a fantastic place to wrap up. Thank you so much. I mean, covered a lot of ground, and I just so appreciate your, getting to chat to you and just generally just getting to see you. It's such a treat. Thank you so much. That was awesome. I really appreciate it. Like, you're the best. Thank you for doing this. I don't know if anybody's going to watch it, but I hope they do, because you said a lot of incredibly fascinating things.
Mate, two handsome men like us, who's not going to want to watch?
Let's hope. Yeah, good point. I don't know why I'm selling myself short.
Yeah, mate, it's so good to chat, and I hope to see you soon in
You
London,
too, man.
or I'll be in LA.
Absolutely. Much love, dude.
All the best.
Good to see you.
Bye, mate. Bye.
All right.